Every person in this story helped him rise to power. Every person in this story was eventually destroyed by him. Some were killed, some were imprisoned, some were publicly humiliated until they broke. He used each of them exactly as long as they were useful. Then he used them one more time as an example. In 1935, Mao Zedong was not yet in control of anything. The Chinese Communist Party was fractured, exhausted from the long march, and fighting for survival against both the Japanese invasion and Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces. Mao needed allies. He needed generals who would fight. He needed intellectuals who would write. He needed administrators who could govern. And he found them. In Yan'an, Mao cultivated an image that was carefully constructed and entirely convincing. Edgar Snow, the American journalist who spent weeks with him in 1936, came away describing a man of remarkable personal magnetism, someone who listened more than he spoke, who remembered the names of soldiers he had met once, and who seemed, above all, like someone building a movement rather than building power for himself. The men who built the revolution alongside him saw the same person. They trusted him because they had fought beside him, argued with him, and watched him make decisions under pressure. That trust was not naive. It was earned over decades, which is what made it so useful. In 1942, Mao launched what he called the Yan'an Rectification Campaign. The official purpose was ideological education, correcting mistaken tendencies in party thinking. Every cadre, every officer, every intellectual in Yan'an was required to attend study sessions, write self-criticisms, and submit to evaluation by their peers. What it actually was, a systematic method for identifying everyone who had independent thoughts about how the party should be run. If you wrote your self-criticism and it was accepted, you were loyal. If you hesitated, qualified your answers, or privately expressed doubt, you were noted. Not punished, not yet, just noted. In 1943, the campaign escalated into what Mao called the Rescue Campaign, identifying enemy agents who had infiltrated the party. Mass meetings were held. Individuals were accused by their colleagues. Confessions were extracted. Some confessed to things they had not done, simply to make the pressure stop. By the time the campaign ended in 1944, Mao had achieved something that no purge or execution could have delivered. He knew exactly who would break under pressure, who would speak out, and who would remain silent. He had tested every significant figure in the party and created a map of their vulnerabilities. On the 1st of October 1949, Mao Zedong stood on Tiananmen Gate and proclaimed the People's Republic of China. The Civil War was over. The nationalist forces had retreated to Taiwan. It was the moment his allies had fought toward for decades. It was also the moment his allies became his problem. The men who had built the military, organized the party, and administered the liberated territories now occupied the positions of power in the new state. Peng Dehuai commanded the military. Liu Shaoqi ran the party apparatus. Zhou Enlai managed foreign affairs. They were not subordinates. They were, by any reasonable measure, co-founders. Mao began isolating them not through confrontation, but through structure. New committees were created that reported to him directly, bypassing existing hierarchies. Loyal deputies were inserted into departments run by potential rivals. Information flows were restructured so that Mao's office received reports before the ministers they concerned. None of this was visible. None of it required a single arrest or accusation. It looked like administrative reorganization. It was a cage being built around people who didn't know they were inside it yet. In 1956, Mao announced a new policy. He called it the 100 Flowers Campaign. The phrase came from an old Chinese saying, "Let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 schools of thought contend." The message to intellectuals, professionals, and party members was explicit. Speak freely. Criticize the party. Identify what is not working. Your feedback is welcome. Many believed him. For several months in 1957, China experienced something it had not had in years. People saying what they actually thought. That had never happened under Mao before. It would never happen again. Then, in June 1957, Mao declared the campaign over. The criticism had gone too far. Those who had spoken were now identified as rightists, enemies of the revolution. The Anti-Rightist campaign that followed was swift and comprehensive. An estimated 500,000 people were labeled rightists. Many were sent to labor camps. Some were executed. All of them had identified themselves by accepting Mao's invitation to speak. The most chilling aspect of the 100 Flowers campaign is not the punishment that followed. It is the question it raises about intention. Did Mao always plan to use the criticism to identify his enemies? The historical evidence suggests he did. The trap was set before the flowers were invited to bloom. By 1966, Mao faced a problem of his own making. The Great Leap Forward, his economic program of the late 1950s, had caused a famine. An estimated 30 to 45 million people died, more than the entire population of California. In peacetime. The party leadership knew. Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping had quietly begun reversing Mao's policies to address what remained of the disaster. They had not challenged him publicly, but they had made decisions without him. And Mao noticed. Mao's response was to bypass the party entirely. He mobilized a generation of young people, students, teenagers, and gave them a mission. Destroy the old world. Destroy bourgeois culture, traditional values, and anyone in authority who represented the old ways of thinking. He called them the Red Guards. He gave them his personal blessing and a small red book of his quotations. Then he pointed them at his enemies. Liu Shaoqi, the man who had been named Mao's successor, the head of state of the People's Republic of China, was publicly denounced. His wife was dragged before crowds and beaten. Liu himself was subjected to mass struggle sessions, stripped of all positions, expelled from the party, and denied medical treatment for his diabetes. He died in detention in 1969, alone, unrecognized, his body buried under a false name. Peng Dehuai, the military commander who had dared to write Mao a private letter criticizing the Great Leap Forward, had been arrested in 1959. During the Cultural Revolution, he was subjected to further persecution. He died in prison in 1974. Deng Xiaoping was sent to work in a tractor factory. He would survive and eventually return. Most did not. Mao did not eliminate his rivals all at once. He eliminated them one at a time, using each removal to make the next one possible. By the time anyone understood the pattern, the people who might have named it were already gone. The people who helped Mao rise to power were not naive. They were experienced, intelligent, and politically sophisticated. They simply could not imagine that someone they had worked alongside for decades was, the entire time, building something they would not survive. The question is not whether that could happen again. The question is, how would you know if it was already happening?